Hello, we are Eden's Cave. We are a laboratory theatre company based in the Forest of Dean. And over the past 3 years, we've been making a performance project called Forests that we took to the house in February 2020. Our main theatrical influences for Eden's Cave herald predominantly from the ensemble laboratory theatres of Poland, and specifically the lineage of Jerzy Kotowski. 3 of the company members, Emma Bonici, Adam Clifford and myself, worked for a Polish theatre company called Song of the Goat, an ensemble training-based theatre company based in Wrocław, which incorporate very strong physical and vocal work within their performances. The lineage of our tradition comes from the work of 2 American artists, Nancy Spania and Paul Oatel, who are life partners. Nancy was the director of the Nancy Spania Dance Theatre Company, firstly in New York, then in Boulder, for many, many years, and Paul was a main dancer. He studied at the Experimental Theatre Wing at New York University and worked with Cieslak, who was Grotowski's main performer. So there were quite interesting relationships between the Polish tradition and Paul's work. But Paul's work is different. It focuses on the individual artist, the realization and manifestation of the essential and unique artist within them, realizing their personal freedoms and personal expressions. And so those 2 lineages are the central pillars of Eden's Cave.
I also bring in a particular strain by way of storytelling and live oral performance, which are very much to do with community models of gathering. So I bring in a lot of the community-minded work.
And I think that's what's really exciting about Eden's Cave is some sort of meeting point, melting pot for 3 very strong lineages. The lineage of the laboratory, very physical, song-based theatre of Poland, of the work of Paul, on the work of the individual artist, the freedom, excavating the freedoms of the individual artist, and then this very strong lineage which Ellie brings in of community, of storytelling, of gathering, of ceremony.
Forest is a devised piece of work, but we started also with 3 really important factors in our making, which were very key to what then became a development of what I would say was our specific process of making in the process of making forests. And these 3 things were location, so where the work was made, duration, the time over which we were making it, and the way we conducted our rehearsal rooms. So what was really important about location is the idea of making for us is that we wanted to be deeply immersed in our subject matter, and in this case it was forests, and we wanted to have a physical, tangible experience of that. And to that end, it was really important for us that we were able to rehearse in the Forest of Dean, thanks to the ASHA Centre.
The ASHA Centre is a peace education charity located in the Forest of Dean, right in the heartlands of the forest, with a beautiful biodynamic garden. So they're already a living and working community dedicated to holistic education.
Also, what was very unique about the ASHA Centre is it was a community-based centre. And so while we were looking at the connections and underground root connections and systems of community of sorts that makes up a forest, we were then able to see that in a kind of human sense within the community as structured by the ASHA Centre.
And so immediately we had access to woodlands that we would not have had access to if we continued to work at RADA in a city, in an urban environment. So coming to the ASHA Centre was a fundamental, critical evolution for our project. Firstly, so that we could suddenly interact and explore our environment in a very real way, in a very real encounter, but also because the ASHA Centre is a living community. And so we began to listen as we witnessed the ASHA Centre's community. We began to listen to what our company community might be and become.
So that first part of the process, we dived into each other's training, and that really fused the company and created a kind of foundation. It's sort of like cultivating the soil. The second part of the process was about generating material. It was about trying to find character. And to do that, we used the starting point of the shared training. So we would take certain exercises and a provocation for an improvisation.
The questions evolved, the conversations evolved, the topics, the material that we brought in, different poems, different source materials began to change. We explored long improvisations, physical improvisations, and that changed over time. We began to think about how the company structures itself, what we need as a company. We created certain frameworks within the working day in different periods of our work. Yoga in the morning, then physical training, acrobatics, and then moving into free-form explorations, conversations, song. We did lots of expeditions into the forest at night, trying to tune with water, going to different caves. It was a very rich research for us, and so our process over time was one where we had to listen, and that was part of the theme. How do we listen? How do we retune? How do we reperceive ourselves in relationship to the natural world? In relationship to ourselves as well, how do we come into this environment? Are we able to come into this environment? Do we have a right to talk about forests?
And part of that was about setting up improvisations which really stated clearly what the problem was. The systems that had created the problem, the systems within ourselves that made the ecological crisis, the inner forests. Both of the previous sections, or both of the previous phases, the sharing of training and then the improvisations, generation of material, were so organic. We had a vast body of material to pick from and to try and decipher. And because we weren't working with a pre-existing text, you couldn't help but see the connection between us as individuals and our life journey, and potentially the life journey of the characters that were coming up.
The final piece was made out of the dialogue between 5 performative voices and characters, which were then interwoven. And added to this, the process of performing for us was about creating a bridge or a dialogue between ourselves and our own personal process in the room, which Henry had invited in by asking us what we dreamt of. And it was a dialogue between our personal selves and our character. And character was also found and developed through working with archetypes. And so we weren't trying to become our character, we were understanding what is the conversation between ourselves and character.
And once we understood the character's needs and where the character wanted to go, where we wanted to go, we could then try to decipher the arc of the play.
There have been huge times of just facing the void, of not knowing, because it's been a very intuitive experience, wandering forward, trying to allow the piece to come through us, the piece that wants to be made, without any, we didn't start with any text, we're not hopping onto any story, we started with this huge and what turned out to be rather naive question. The stumbling forward has been the most transformative aspect, because the level of deep trust we've had to call upon in order to allow it to come into being has been huge. And I think it's characterized by having the length of time and the relationships we built with each other during it have been deeply transformative.
I think the metaphor for stumbling forward, when I think of that word, stumbling into the dark, not knowing where the pathway will take us, is a really beautiful metaphor for certainly our process, but also for the process a company or a group of people undertake with the creation process. Stumbling, how you stumble, how you move forward, how you draw in inspirations, what you bring into the space, how you talk to each other, what you seek to explore together. The quality of excavation, the quality of searching, the desire to search, to continue to search, no matter the challenges, no matter the obstacles, no matter the quarrels, the challenges, the desire to search, to draw out the piece, was certainly one that kept fueling our process.
My background is not just as an actor and a theatre maker, but also a classically trained percussionist, also writing music. And so a big part of my practice is how music and sound are really deeply integrated into the theatre making process. At Eden's Cave, I think we're all on the same page that music, in particular actually, the music made by the human voice, has the ability to open up quite transformative spaces for an audience and also within an audience. I think it's why we love music so much. It's that it has that very direct route often to our emotions, and so used in the right way and used carefully, sensitively, it can be a very potent theatrical tool to create the kind of experience that we want to create for our audience.
For me, songs are a way of knowing, a way of uncovering, a way of discovering. And in that sense, the songs were never sung as songs or as notes. They were sung as stories. They were sung as ways of conveying experience and emotion and interactions. The interactions in the meetings of the character, and their world outside. And it was a primary, the way that we approached the musicality of the piece was definitely with a sense of trying to dialogue with something wider, but also speak to our audience on a level that passes the cognitive and instead taps into something felt or intuitive somehow within them.
One of my favourite things that we used to do at Song of the Goat was these tuning improvisations. So there would be as many as 15 or 18 of us, and we would sing these multi-note chords, starting simple and gradually getting more complex, coming in and out where we wanted to on whatever pitches we wanted to. And the goal was to tune our pitches so beautifully together that the chord we created kind of resonated in such a way that it opened up this kind of new space. It's kind of like a vertical space, and we called this the fifth voice, or the angel. So that was kind of very literally through the resonance of the sound opening a new space, but it was also, I think, for us as singers, in that exercise would open up a space within us, and it would also help us to connect in really deep ways to the ensemble.
Dialogue is also present in the choice of using polyphonic music. Polyphonic music, by its nature, is also a conversation. There are voices who are in conversation with one another. And so what we were really interested in is we were interested in seeing and hearing beyond our own perspective, our own singular perspective. And I think that was one, for me, that was one of the really powerful strengths of the creation of this piece, was that in the end we created something that was bigger than a single one of us, or our own singular perspective.
A performance is an event. It's a gathering of people. And how we set the frameworks for each person, each individual person within that audience to drop into themselves, to have the opportunity to respond, to listen, to have space, to feel the material in their own way, was a very important part of your thought for a long time, to witness the audience come down off the seating bank into the stage where the performance had been shared, and to begin to reflect and express their own experiences of forests and the performance.
For me, I almost think about Forest as a two-part piece, the piece that we've made and then what happens afterwards, this opening.
For us, it's very much like the metaphor of a tree. There is the one tree, which for us is our performance, which of course has many layers to it. But the more we share it, the more we open it, the more we allow ourselves to reach out and connect with others, the audience, other individuals, for them to experience the work in their own way, the more we feel that the piece has a multidimensionality, it has a quality of a prism, it has the sense of a tree communicating with other trees, that somehow we're all in this together, we've all got the same questions, we're all seeking the same answers.
You know, I'm not kind of alone in this journey, and that other people are beginning to engage and work in kind of ecological practices to heal.
It's very beautiful, it's very poetic work for me. It's work that touches my heart. It makes me want to care again.
It was incredible, definitely. Just honestly, from the bottom of my heart, one of the best shows I've ever seen, honestly.
A very deep and quite profound piece of theatre work this evening, but I feel very uplifted by it. And that sense of the work bringing hope, bringing spirit, bringing a sense of groundedness, which I experienced through the performers.
It was what the forest, the dying forest, was actually doing to the human being, and it creates fear. And so we were introduced to a philosophical understanding of how we are to address ourselves at the end.
The complexity of responses matches the complexity of our experience making and creating and performing this piece. The very intricate, delicate layers of dramaturgy that we spent 3 years building up seems to be echoed in the responses people give. One of my favourite pieces of feedback is someone said, whilst I did not fully understand all that I saw, I felt it, and that is golden. So in creating a very spacious opportunity for people to respond, we've managed to gather, I think, very spacious responses in which people could be extremely honest about the horizons that had been opened. And that's the most satisfying thing of all to us as makers. Actually, I feel like a lot of the challenges that any company faces in terms of getting into theatres and developing audiences and then developing new work is all shifted in the face of what life will be, not sort of post-pandemic, but also during pandemic. You know, the theatres are shut for the foreseeable, the arts budgeting is completely out of whack, everything has changed, and for me that's like the beautiful opportunity to look at how we're going to gather in a different kind of way and what different kind of spaces are we going to gather in, and how can this piece, which speaks very much to this time, it is absolutely prescient, is going to find new places.
The big challenge is social distancing. We don't know when the theatres are going to open. And when they open, we don't know what the restrictions will be on numbers. And we don't know how the audiences are going to feel about being close. We don't know how an audience member is going to feel about being in an audience. My feeling is that there's always an opportunity. And instead of, shipping off the play, because it's a finished piece that can be repeated now and would potentially, travel to rural venues and establish theatres across the country, that actually this situation is going to make us become more specific in terms of how we present this piece and to who we present it to.
What are we going to be moving towards in terms of the modality of that live encounter? And for us, the forests, and what we've been exploring in terms of, yes, the performance, but also the gathering that is around the performance. Where can those gatherings happen if it's about exchanging of food, and it's about joy, and it's about the simple human interactions, pleasures? If it is about that, then what structures can we create? Where can those live performances be? Can it be in a forest, or a church, or a graveyard, or a warehouse, or an old derelict car park? What is relevant for us, for forests? What is relevant for other companies' works in this time?
I think the challenge and the opportunity is to pay particular attention to what kind of ritual we invite them into, how we invite them into that. What is the story of the audience in our piece? And how can we make theatre even more live than it already is?
The house is an incredible space in the southwest. I don't know any other venue like it. Its links with Theatre Royal Plymouth, the Conservatoire, the support of the Arts Institute is extremely unique. Its spaces are state of the art, but also I find what's really exciting about the house stage is that it's dynamic. It's a large space, its seating can go in, can come out, its floors can be wooden, can be black lino, grey lino. It's a very dynamic space, it's got fantastic lights. The environment, the student environment, the learning environment, the educational environment of the students being there, of having that facility, of being able to look at professional companies, encountering different forms and styles and mediums of work, performance work, dance, theatre, physical theatre, experimental theatre, avant-garde, all of those things, to be able to have that facility is really wonderful.
It felt like coming down to a real working hub. It felt like coming down and being able to join a full conversation between other makers. It felt like a homing point for saying, let's discuss, let's chew. And that it was very, very rich.
It was a real privilege to come and perform at the house, and what was immediately apparent was the quality of the facilities. Not only that, but what was wonderful was the interest in the work that we were making. I think probably a lot of programmers and producers might refer to our work perhaps as risky, but I think it's really important that there are venues with resources out there that are that really want to support, risky work, whatever that means. I think there's a strong connection between risk and imagination. They're by no means interchangeable, but they have a lot in common. And when we think about imagination, imagination is key to searching for new possibilities. It's key to defining our future, whether that's simply within the arts, or whether it's society at large, or whether it's in politics, or a mixture of those things. So what the house offers to artists based in the Southwest, and indeed artists who come to visit, I think the value of that can't be underestimated.